Finneas, it is so great to have you back on Triple J.
So nice to be back. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Congratulations on this new record, album number 2. You are no stranger to an album cycle, an album release, but for you as a soloist, second time round, how's it feeling in your gut? Everything.
This is feeling so fun. I mean, the first album I put out was a couple years ago, and it was really a sort of a singular effort. It was just me all the way through. I made the whole album kind of alone in a room. And this go round, I asked a bunch of my really close friends to be involved. And it's meant that like every step of the way, it's just been like kind of a party. It's been much more fun. Like yesterday, we were doing a video shoot. There were hours of technical difficulties and delays, but instead of being like alone in a green room, I was with like 5 of my really close friends hanging out. And I was like, this was a good idea.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun.
I want to talk about that collaboration a little bit later on, but the record is called For Cryin Out Loud. And I got to say, it's been a funny one to back announce on radio. I feel like I have to put a bit of gravitas and theatrics to it every time I say it. Can I hear how you would say it in an everyday sentence or situation?
Oh, for crying out loud. To me, that's how it rolls off the tongue. Can I just double check? Is that a thing you say in Australia?
Yeah, but I think our version would maybe be, and I'm going to language warning myself when I say
Here
this.
we go.
I think we would say, "Oh, for fuck's sake," like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know?
This would get me. Spotify would not smile upon this. Apple Music would not smile upon this. So for crying out loud. But do they mean the same thing? 100% they mean the same thing.
Yes, it is that moment of kind of frustration of just, you're at your wits' end. And you said that this kind of reflected where you were at in the world at the time. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that and the kind of like,
Yeah.
the kind of the time period we're looking at here?
Yeah, I think when I sat down to make this record, the thing that I was really trying to do was write songs that felt like I was sitting across the table from somebody having a conversation with them. Um, and I think there's a lot of songs about sort of conflict on this album, but um, not songs about anger and heartbreak as much as just kind of ongoing relationships and
Mm.
ongoing kind of dynamics, whether it's friends or loved ones or family. Songs like Family Feud are about my family and my sister, and then songs like For Crying Out Loud in 2001 are about relationships. But I just thought that the phrase was kind of a sentiment of like exasperation, and I thought there was a kind of an exasperated feeling about the whole album. So I thought it summed it up nicely.
It's exasperation, but I also hear like treating people with grace and like taking a moment and a certain optimism as well, which I think harkens back to the first record, which
The
is really
first
great.
record, yeah.
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 So you are someone who has made a name for themselves being a bedroom producer. And I
Yeah.
wanted to know, you've already mentioned the friends that you got on board for this one. What was the
Yeah.
turning point for you, the motivation to go from working alone to then being hyper collaborative, live studio sessions, figuring it out as you went? Was there a particular moment where you went, I need to do that for this record?
Yeah, I would say there's sort of three. One is that I spent my teenage years from the time I was about 13 to 18 in garage bands, playing guitar and singing and sounding so bad. Like we were all terrible. But I did love it. I think the feeling of you and your friends playing in a band together is kind of unbeatable. It's just such an exciting, energetic feeling. And then I started to learn how to produce on Logic in my bedroom and started to program everything and do everything myself. And recording a full band, even at the kind of cheapest, most lo-fi way, is like kind of expensive, and you have to have a lot of square footage to just fit a drum kit and mic it up, and guitar amps and mic those up. So it's just kind of like a big footprint. And so for years, I would just kind of produce everything in my bedroom alone or make stuff with Billy. And I think last summer, 2023, on my birthday, I kind of put a drum kit and some guitar amps in my living room at home and invited some of my friends over to jam. And that's what we did for my birthday. And I was like, this is the most fun I've had in so long. I think I have to make this album this way. And so I rented out a studio, and Aaron Forbes, who's been a sort of creative partner of mine for a while, engineered the record while we were, recording live. And we recorded and wrote almost the entire album live, which was just such an exciting, fun way to make music. and I'm really happy about how it turned out.
Yeah, that's so sick that you turned a birthday hang kind of into the real
Yeah,
world. Who
I
got
just was like, this is so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're like, less cake this time, but we're
yeah.
gonna we're gonna get in there. Who got the call up to be in this live band and why did you want them to work with you on this?
So Ricky, who I had already done a tour of Australia with for Laneway back in 2023. Played guitar all over this album, which was a treat. My friend Marinelli, who is a producer who makes the music with an artist named Wallace and Spill Tab, he came and did all this crazy synth modular stuff. A drummer from a band called Bad Sons named Miles Morris played drums all over this record. And then a songwriter named Lucy Healy, who is an amazing songwriter producer, sang backup vocals and played keys. And then Aaron Forbes, the aforementioned engineer, bass player on this record.
I remember Ricky
It was
being
really
with
fun.
you at Laneway and you were telling me a
Oh,
funny
he's a
story
very
about
memorable presence.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You were telling a story about how you had a bus driver named Metal. His nickname was Metal and that he was making Metal laugh.
Bus driver is generous. He was driving like the van. He was not. Yeah, that was just that day. I think that was in Brisbane. But yeah, Metal was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a good memory. I also remember Metal, and I
Yeah.
remember Ricky talking all about this. But yeah, he's a memorable presence.
So you make it happen, you get in the room together. Did you go
Yeah.
in with any pre-existing ideas, voice notes, melodies, things you'd been working on? How much of a blank canvas was there amongst all of you?
I went in, I think I always try to do some homework in case I don't come up with anything good at the time, right? So if I'm like, wow, I have no good idea today, let me check my notes. So I had some things rattling around. I had the song title Cleats. I knew what I wanted to write that song about. I had written this song called Starfucker that is the first track on the album. But I found really quickly during the process that the most fulfilling creative version of it was off the cuff. The less I sort of preconceived, the better. It's like the drummer was playing such cool, rhythms, and the guitars and bass were so dope that I was just being reactive and writing from a place of like, oh, that sounds awesome. I'm gonna try to see what I can do on top of that. So it was pretty. The thing that I was the most happy about was letting it all just sort of come out of nowhere.
And did you do these sessions in bulk, if you will, over a certain
Yeah.
period of time?
Yeah, we did the first week. I kind of called everybody, and like everybody that I invited to do it has sort of like full-time jobs as producer songwriters, as do I. So it was like I was conscious of everybody's time, and so I was like, let's just do 5 days. Like let's just do like Monday to Friday, 1 week. I planned it all months in advance so everybody could block off time. So we did 5 days, and it went great, and we got like half the album written in the first 5 days, and then like several weeks later, I was like, let's do another week. And I think 5 days was too many days in a row. So let's just do Monday, Tuesday, and then we'll take a break Wednesday and we'll do Thursday, Friday. And so we did a 4 day week. And then we took another couple weeks off while we all went back and did our other projects. And then we did one more week. So I think we did like 14 days total with like one extra makeup day. And that was like all of the sessions for the record. And then I kind of took all the files home and, did better vocal takes and stuff like that. But yeah, it was like 14 days of jamming together total. And we made, there's 10 songs on this album. We really made like probably 15 or 16 songs, and a couple of them were like so terrible. But we made 9 that I thought were amazing, and then I put one song that I wrote alone at the top of the record.
What instrument were you in this setting?
I tried to be on as little as possible. I feel like I've spent a career sort of playing, like being kind of Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins, like playing everything. And so I thought it would be a good challenge to just be the singer. So I'd say probably for about 60% of it, I was just sitting in a chair with a microphone. And then for another 40%, I played some guitar.
Wow.
But I wanted to keep myself sort of, when I hold a guitar, when I'm sitting at a piano, like I have habits that I go into. I have places that I go musically. And I was like, I think it might be a more interesting process for me if I'm just reacting, if I'm just hearing everybody go to these places and saying, "Oh, I like that. I'm not crazy about that part, but let's go back to that other thing." And it proved to be really fun.
Well, that kind of answers my next question because I was going to say, obviously, working in this setting, you are a multi instrumentalist, but this is a moment where you're being freed up physically, you're being freed
Yeah.
up time wise. How does
Yeah.
that free you up mentally and creatively?
I think it let me think about the songs themselves more. Like that's what it really felt like. I think, when I say songs themselves, I mean sort of like melody and lyrics. If I'm sort of worrying about like, oh, I've written myself this little guitar part that I'm not really good enough to play, and let me program these drums real quick. Again, that's like all sort of time that's taken out of, is this the best lyric I can write? Is this the best melody that I can sing? So I think it kind of freed me up to be a better songwriter.
Yeah, wow. And I have to say, your voice is beautiful on this record, Phineas. Like, I don't want
Ah,
to
that means a lot.
I don't want to blow smoke up your ass, but listening to it and in particularly in headphones, it feels really strong, and it just feels like there's just such a presence on this. It got me thinking. I know that you did choir for a long time when you were a
Yeah.
kid to then a teen. Well, do you remember the first moment as a young boy where you went, "I can sing. I'm good at this."
You know what? My parents, we sang a lot at home, and my parents are so supportive, and they were very much like instilling in me that I could sing. They were like, you have a beautiful voice" as a little kid. And so I went out into the world with all this sort of self-confidence. And I remember meeting a kid named Adrian Turner on set. I was in this movie when I was 12 called Bad Teacher, and he was on set. And he was quite a singer as a 12-year-old. He was like doing runs and stuff. You know what I mean? He sounded like he was in the Jackson 5. He was amazing. And I remember like singing with him and this other kid. This is like 12-year-olds are like this. This other kid was like, "Adrian is amazing. You are not amazing." And I remember being like, "Whoa." But Adrian was much better than me. So I think in some ways, and then Billy starts singing, and I think Billy has like the best voice in the world. And so I haven't actually had like all that much self-confidence as a singer over the years because my the lucky part of my job is being surrounded by like the best singers, like
Mm.
I write "When the Party's Over," Billy sings it. She knocks it out of the park. I write "Lonely," Justin Bieber sings it. It's unbelievable. Like I feel like I have this really lucky life where I write material and the best singers in the world sing it. So that really means a lot to me that you think my voice sounds good on this. I had a great time singing on it.
For real, from start to finish. And I particularly, you mentioned Starfucker, and that was a song that you wrote by yourself. That was one that was
Yeah.
a solo work from you. When you're noodling away at the piano or whatever you're
Yeah.
doing, how do you know what's happening in your gut that goes, "This is a Finneas song"?
Well, I it used to be that I would sort of write all the time alone and then kind of be less directional about it and say, "Hey, Billy, I wrote this song." And as time has gone on, I would say, especially in my relationship with Billy, she's become a more and more confident writer. So she co-wrote everything on "Hit Me Hard and Soft." She co-wrote everything on "Happier Than Ever." So it's only back to um, "When We All Fall Asleep" where there are songs that I wrote alone.
Mhm.
And so that has been a great, sort of advancement in her career as a songwriter to me. I love co-writing with her. So it means that like when I'm sitting down to write alone, I sort of automatically now think this will probably be for myself, unless I'm sitting down specifically asked by somebody to make them an instrumental or write them a song, which I'll happily do. But I'd say typically if I'm sitting down to write a song alone, I am writing it for myself at this point.
When you were on Triple J off the back of Optimist, you said
Yeah.
that you take more risks working alone than if you were in the
Mm,
company of a stranger, and that producing
mm,
yourself as an artist means you're able to push yourself into uncomfortable places.
okay.
Working with this crew, producing the
Yeah.
record then, how do you think you did maintain that risk taking?
Well, I think one of the things that's a kind of a fun parallel there is that what you sacrifice, like, for reference, I still did a lot of my vocals alone in a room because I think that when you're doing a vocal, sometimes you want to feel like not shy about it. You don't want somebody looking you dead in the eye while you're doing a vocal. Billy's the same way. Billy does a lot of her vocals like while I'm upstairs making myself a sandwich. Um, but I think that take more risks alone. One of the sort of trade-offs that I found was like if I'm working alone, I might be kind of reckless and frivolous in a fun way, but I found that in this case, because I was working with like close friends of mine, the kind of two places of like I'm working with a room full of strangers or I'm working alone. Working with a bunch of friends of mine meant that I felt like I was held to this like really high standard of like honesty. Like if
Mm.
I said some lyric that was like not a thing that felt honest to who I am, I'd have like one of my closest friends to look over at me and be like, what are you like, who do you think you are? You know what I mean? And if you're in a room alone, you can kind of like convince yourself that you're some way that you're not really. So it was an effective way to kind of keep myself honest.
Yeah, keep yourself in check. And some of these songs on this record, they are very personal, very confessional, but a lot of the writing, like you said, is in the second person. It feels like you're talking
Yeah.
to me when I'm listening to
Hmm.
this album. Can you tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about that interplay of, this being your solo
Perspective.
project, writing for yourself, but placing the listener in the scene?
Yeah, I started to put more emphasis, I think, on the actual individual lines in a song as opposed to every single part of every song being this sort of like diary entry autobiographical thing. I think like there's a trend in music of the last 10 years that is there's a lot of music that's amazing that's like this that's like hyper specific, like lyrics in songs that are like I went down to the drugstore on Allen Street and I bought this thing and it was 11:30 p.m. and I ran into Zach. And it's like they're so specific. And there are songs that are like really interesting and appealing, but sometimes the specificity turns me off from an ability to like empathize or put myself in the shoes. And like when I listen to like a song like um I think it's called 33 by Bon Iver, like there's
Mm.
a line in that song where he says these will just be places to me now. And it's such a vague line, and I don't know what that means to him, but I know what that means to me. And I just like have always fallen in love with this kind of like ambiguous songwriting. And so a song like For Crying Out Loud, it's like that song is about a lot of things to me, but if it's just a line like what's going to help you wake up won't help you sleep at night, like these little phrases that to me have a lot of meaning that are hopefully ambiguous enough that that can mean anything to anybody. That's sort of what I was going for on this record.
We need to talk the specificity, though, of Family Feud. This
Sure.
is a beautiful song, and I feel like we talk so much about the creative partnership between yourself and Billie Eilish, but I feel like this is a
Uh-huh.
song for Billie and Finneas O'Connell. It feels like we've been taken into your family home,
Yeah.
and oh my God, it was just a gut punch, that line. Oh my God, Pepper had to be put down at the
Yeah.
beginning. Even though that's
Yeah.
specific to you, it just, oh,
Everyone's dog is named Pepper.
oh yeah.
It's like the most. I was 10, I think, when we got Pepper. It might have been 12, but I like the fact that I was like, we should name it Pepper. Everyone has a dog named Pepper. Not my most original idea.
Okay, so
Um,
you named the family dog.
yeah, I shouldn't have.
But yeah, but it,
Um,
it was it's a beautiful song, and I just
thank
wanted
you.
to know what it means to you and what writing that track did for you.
Yeah, that was a really personal experience for me and kind of a challenging song to write just because I really cared so much about the subject matter and I if I was gonna bother writing a song like that, I wanted to really get it right. Um, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about a lot of things. Billy is now 22 years old, which is 21, 22. Like I was 21 and 22 when her first album came out. So I think about how young I was at the time and how old I thought I was. And, back then she was 16, 17. So I was thinking a lot about getting older and, neither of us live at home with our parents anymore and just sort of thinking about the dynamic of a family that's like we're still super close, all of us. We see each other all the time, but just kind of like on paper, there's a difference between being super close and, living across the hall from somebody. And, I think one of the great gifts like the song in many ways is like the way that it almost was, right? The sort of that we had this amazing thing happen to both of us. We're so lucky for it, but what would it have been like if we didn't? But the real truth is that if we hadn't, um, I think we wouldn't have had this excuse to spend all this time together. And it's been such a great experience to be, so interwoven in each other's lives these past 8, 9 years. I just feel like so lucky for it.
That line, a part of me is a part of you, just a different shade of
Yeah.
blue. I thought, oh my God, just really
Thank
beautiful
you.
stuff. Finneas, we're going to be hearing tracks from this record sooner than we think. For Crying Out Loud is coming our way on tour in Australia, Jan 9 to 13 in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. We love you here. Are you excited to come back?
I'm so excited. On a very selfish level, um, I knew I wanted to come to Australia on this tour, and the last place I went to tour was Australia. So starting in Australia, does that make the most sense in the world? No, it doesn't. But it's the middle of summer for you guys, and that just sounded too fun to miss.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's start in Australia.
I'm so excited that we're going to be the ones to see it first. I feel like there was a YouTube comment on Cleats and it said, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to sob or dance my ass off. I feel like that is this record in a nutshell. Finneas, your second record is out now. It is called For Crying Out Loud. Thank you so much for joining us on Triple J.
Thank you so much for having me.
Triple